Well, welcome to the Digital Solutions Factory Tour. And in this session, we're going to do a tutorial on Domino Vault. My name is Marty Lechleiter. I'm the product manager for Domino Vault. Some assumptions about this session. The tutorial is based on Domino 101 or later. It also assumes that Domino directory, names.nsf, has display names, internet names, and manager names populated in person documents. We're going to be using information about people in the workflow of this application we're building. There are other ways to get people information, but this tutorial assumes that it's in Domino directory. And the last point is, this is probably not the best tutorial if you're brand new to Vault. I would advise perhaps the introductory step-by-step tutorial as a start and then coming to this one after that. All right. So what are we going to build? We're going to build a mobile phone ordering system. So we're going to let you go through a catalog and pick a phone you want. You can sort by brand, model, storage platform. If the phone is over $900, it's going to require 2 levels of approval. If it's below that, only 1 level. So you'll be able to pick the phone. You'll see a nice display of the phone. You can click order, and then you're put into a mode where you can then type in your business justification and see who the approvers are, and then you can submit your order. All right, so how are we going to build this? Well, this is the recipe. Right? You think of this tutorial, this session here is kind of a cooking show. I'm not going to completely build it from scratch in front of you, but rather show you how you build it. And we're going to take a look at the application as it evolves. So this handout here, which you'll get, you've got the source to follow along. You've got the spreadsheet, which we're going to start with, and then you've got how the application looks after each one of these steps in the process. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take that mobile phone catalog spreadsheet. So it's a spreadsheet that has a list of phones, information about the phones, a URL to an image on the phone, etc. And we're going to create a catalog app out of it, right? Once we create the catalog app, we're going to open it up, and then we're going to add a new phone, a new form to it. So we're going to add an order form, and then we'll put a title up at the top, mobile phone ordering system. We're going to add a table, and in the table we'll add 5 different fields: brand, model, platform, storage, and UID. We're not going to display UID. We're not going to display the table buttons. We're using the table really as a display. And then we're going to add a field on the form, the main body of the form itself, called UID. And the idea is that we're going to populate the table with phones. You'll be able to select a phone, and then the UID for that phone is going to appear in that UID field on the main form. All right. Some settings to hide the table buttons. And to populate the table, we're going to use a search service. So we're going to search the catalog and then pull in information about the phones into the table. And then finally, when we click a row in the table, we're going to execute some JavaScript. So there's an on-click event, and we're going to put this JavaScript in there, right? And when we're done, we're going to see something like this. So let's go look at the pieces. All right, so the first thing I'll do is I'll start with, I'll make this just a little bit bigger. We'll start with the spreadsheet. So this is pretty simple. You come in, you pick the spreadsheet, there it is. You click a few times, And in a matter of seconds, you now have your phone catalog. So I can see that all of the information from the spreadsheet is in here. And if I look at the structure of this application, I can see that it's the mobile phone catalog in a form. All right. Let's go to the next iteration of this app. So here, I've taken that phone catalog, I've added the order form, I've added this title, a table. If I look inside the table, you'll see I have 5 fields. The UID field is not showing. And the decision on what to show is an option in the table properties. So I've elected not to show the UID, and I've specified no buttons. And you can see that I've got the UID field here. And if I look at this table, the onShow property, you can see the service that we're using. So it's a search service. It searches the phone catalog. There's no inputs. And I'm merely just getting all the information that I want, those 5 fields, and putting it into the table. So the brand, model, platform, storage, the unique identifier. All right, and then finally, the on-click event for the table. So the behavior that we want is that when you click a row in the table, you populate the UID field in the main form with the UID of that phone. So the first line is there's a variable called selected, and that's simply this function, item get selection. Right? So if I click on something, I get that selection. And then I have an if statement here. And the reason for this if statement, if selected equals null, return, do nothing. And the reason I want that in there is I want people to be able to click on the column heads to sort. I don't want to execute this JavaScript if I'm clicking on the column heads, only if I'm clicking on a row. And only if I'm clicking on a row will I get a selection, right? So this little bit of JavaScript just simply says the UID field on the main form is being set to the value of the selected UID field in the table. It's essentially what it says. All right, so we can preview this, and we can see that all the phones from the catalog are in there. The UID field is being passed, and I can sort by platform, brand. Works great. Okay, let's go on with the recipe. So that's taken us to level 2. Let's go on to the next piece of this. So what we want to do is get the details on the selected phone. So the first thing we're going to do is create a section, and in the section, we're going to move that UID field in, and we're going to add some additional fields. So brand, model, platform, storage, supplier, price, an image item, we'll add that as well. We'll set that to a height of 200. And then on the UID field, we're going to add a service, and this service is going to be a retrieve. And what we're going to do is retrieve details from the catalog on the phone that we selected. And the way we're identifying that phone is through the UID. And then we're taking the outputs from that retrieve and we're mapping them into those fields that we just created in this section, as well as the image item. So we map the image URL to the image item. All right. And then what we're going to do is add another section. And this is the section that we're actually going to display. And we're going to move the image item into this section. And we're going to use echo text. And the way that you use echo text is in the text item, the text widget, you'll see this little drop down called insert item, and it allows you to pull any value from your form into the body of your text. And then you can style it. All right. And then the last couple of things we're going to do is We're going to take a little piece of JavaScript and just put it on the fields that capture the details on the phone. And that piece of JavaScript says item set visible false. Now I could go into Stages and say, don't display this. I could put that section on another page, which you never see, but this is a simple way to simply have it not appear. All three approaches would work. And then the other thing I'm doing here is I'm setting a rule on the display section, the pretty display section that we're creating, so that it only appears when UID has a value. So in other words, if there's no selection, don't show me the display. So this is how things should look. And then you can see here, we'll go to the second iteration of this. And again, these are all the links are in the PowerPoint document or the PDF, whatever you receive. And you can download these and follow the recipes. We'll look at this version of the app. All right, so you can see here's what we created before. I moved the UID field into this section. I have all these additional fields here. All right, the image is up here where I want to display it. If I look at this, you could see that I've got a little piece of JavaScript that says set visible false. And I've got a service call on the UID. So when this changes, and it's going to change every time you make a selection, you go ahead and you get the details of the phone. So this is a retrieve. The UID is the input, and then I'm getting those details and mapping them into those fields that we just created. All right. And then you can see I've got, it appears both here on rules and up here, a little rule that says only show this details presentation section when UID has a value. So with that bit of additional work, now I've got a nice presentation of the selected phone that I have. All right. All right. So far, so good. Let's go on to the next piece of the tutorial. And here, what we're going to do in this next piece is get information about the person requesting the phone, as well as the first level approver and second level approver. All right. Now, to do this, we're going to use a service to call the Domino directory. So get user by ID. So you can get user either by username, ID, or email address. All right, and then this service will return display name. It'll return internet address. It'll also return manager. Now, something to know about services in Domino directory. If I return an ID, what I'm going to get is a canonical name. All right, and that's not something I typically want to display. If I return a username, I'll get a hierarchical name. Right? If you're using hierarchical naming in your directory, you'll get that back. And that may be appropriate to display. But in my example here, I wanted to display in the application the display names. So I've got a couple of additional fields that I've added to the hidden section, and the only purpose that I have for these is to use these as inputs to get to the display names. All right. So the way that this works is essentially I chain together 3 different calls. And to help you understand how these calls work, I've got a simple diagram on the right there of the Domino directory structure. So each document in names done on each person document in names done on NSF is going to have those values. So I can't get everything in one call, so I have to do multiple calls, right? And it starts with the form on new, and then it's chained there so that when I get the level 1 name, that it then gets additional information, and then finally the level 2 name gets some additional information, right? And this is all mapped out here, and we'll look at the service calls in the application itself. At the bottom of this chart, one thing I do want to call out, and I'll show this in the code, is this lookup. If you think about it, the person requesting the phone, you want to get who they are and their level 1 and level 2 only in start stage. You only want to do that up front. You don't want to call these services when level 1 touches the form or when level 2. So therefore, what I'm doing is I'm executing the service call via JavaScript. So I have a simple if statement that says, if the current stage is start, then call the service, right? Otherwise, it doesn't call the service. So a little technique that I found that works well with request applications. Right, so let's take a look at these in the application. This is how it will look when we're done. So we'll take a look at number 3 in the sequence. All right. Of course, building on this nice display that we just created, you can see I've got the requester email, level 1 approver, level 1 email, level 2 approver, level 2 email. These I'm going to display in the form. The level 1 name and level 2 name are there for lookup purposes. So the service call starts with the form on new. You can see the JavaScript used to call the service. I'll quickly come over here and just take a look at this service. So you can see I'm using current user, right? So that's whoever is logged in. And then I'm getting this information: display name, internet address, and manager. And then when I've got the level 1, which is the manager, I've got a similar service which kicks off, which then gets display name, internet, email address, and manager. And then this is the last one in the chain. So they're just linked with the on change events. So let's take the level 2 name and then get the level 2 display name and internet address. All right. Now, again, this is assuming that this information is in Domino directory. It could be anywhere, and you could use similar techniques to retrieve this information with services. But the key here is get the information into the application. So if I take a look at this, it just executes and it goes in and it comes up with who the requester is, the level 1, level 2. All right, so an important piece that we just built there. Let's move on. So we're going to go now, and we're going to create the workflow. So we've figured out, who needs to be involved in the workflow. So let's create the workflow itself. So the workflow I want to create is, I need 1 level of approval if it's under 900, but if it's 900 or over, I need 2 levels of approval. Right. So what I do is I add a level 1 and a level 2 stage. All right, so start is always going to go to level 1. Right, so level 1 is always going to be involved. But then there's a question. Does it need a second level? And the question is it greater than or equal to 900? So I've added a field to the form, and I'm calling it level 2 threshold. I could hard code this into the rule, but I think it's probably better practice to have a field in the form that allows you to drive this dynamically. And I'm just putting 900 in there as the default. So in level 1, there's two different buttons. Right, they're both called approve. And it's going to know which one to show based on the rule. Right, so show the appropriate one, whether it's below 900 or greater than or equal to 900. And then therefore, it'll take me to level 2 when it's needed. Otherwise, it's going to take me to approved. Right, so that's my workflow decisioning in the application. And then the next thing I do is create a role. So that I'm going to create an open role called approver. And then for level 1 and level 2, where approver is going to be involved, I need to make sure that they have read and update privileges or permissions. All right, and then finally, I shouldn't say finally, there's a step after this. What I will do is in the start stage, assign a user to the role of approver. All right, and the way I do that currently in the product is I'm assigning the level 1 user to that level 1 stage. I'm calling a service to do that. All right. Now, we have this information in the form already, but in the product's current state, you still have to call a service to do this dynamic assignment. In the next release of the product, we're going to let you dynamically assign directly from a value in the form. We're also introducing in the next version of the product a people picker. And the idea there is that you can just simply pick somebody out of the directory by typing in some number of characters of their first, last name, nickname, and of course, if you're picking a person, it would be nice to use them in an assignment. So this will be simplified in a future release of the product, but for now, you've got to use this service call. And then what you can do is once I have that person assigned to the role, I can then send an email to the role, right? So that is the notification. All right, so I do that in level 1, and then I essentially do the same thing in level 2, the dynamic assignment, and then the notification. All right, so we'll take a look at this version of the app. So this is version 4. And in terms of the runtime, there's really not a lot to see. All the action on this part of the recipe really is what I see in design mode. So you can see, submit level 1 to 2 different buttons. One points to level 2. The other one goes directly to approved. And then I have my rules set on them. So this button shows when it's less than the threshold. And then this button shows when it's greater than or equal to. All right, and then I've got my assignments that I'm making. Assign user by service call. And I'm taking the level 1 email, and then I'm taking the username for level 1 and assigning that to the approver role. And I am then sending an email to the level 1 email, right? So I suppose I could send it to the role or to that level 1 email. I have the level 1 email already in the form. Okay, so that happens there, and it also happens where I need to do another assignment. So in this case, the second assignment is who's going to be the second line. So it's the same logic there. And then if I go over to access, you can see under roles, the approver role, it's open, which means that there's no explicit assignment. So if I come over here, there's nobody explicitly assigned. The assignment happens dynamically. And then I have my permissions for approver as read and update in each one of these. All right, so those are all the pieces to the workflow. So let's move on with this. Okay. So now what I want to do is add some rules. I'm going to do some magic here with rules to make this experience really cool. All right. So the first thing I'm going to add is some text. So in that section that we created for displaying information about the phone, I'm going to add text, and I'm going to use echo text. So I'm going to say this phone is, and then I'm going to take that level 2 threshold. So in that case is 900. This phone is 900 or greater and requires 2 levels of approval. And then I'm going to set a rule on this that says only show this if it's greater than or equal to the threshold. All right, so that'll appear when 2 levels are needed. And then I'm going to add some additional information to this display section. I'm going to add some text, this little back thing that I can click on. I'm going to add a button called order. And then I'm going to add a field for business justification. So the requester would fill out the business justification. And then level 1 comments, level 2 comments. So the level 1 manager would see this. Only the level 2 manager would see this. Right? And of course, the level 1 would be able to see the business justification, but that would be read-only. And the level 2 manager would see the level 1 and the business justification, and both of those would be read-only. All right. Now, the trick that I implemented here is I've got these navigation pieces. So there's a button and some text. And when you click it, I'm setting a flag. And the flag is, and I put this in the hidden section, it's a checkbox. So this is just a Boolean value. It's either true or false. So am I in order mode or not? So if I am, I click order, then it's true. If I click back, then I'm not. All right, so 2 simple pieces of JavaScript on those different navigation elements. And then what I can do is create rules that key off of that Boolean flag. So in this example that I'm showing here, when I'm in order mode, in other words, when that's true, well, let's show the submit button. Let's show the workflow approver section. The different individuals that need to approve this. Let's show the detailed presentation. Let's show the back button. Let's hide the phone selection table. You already made your selection. Let's hide the order button because you clicked order to get here. And let's show the business justification field. Right? And of course, when it's false, the converse is it all happens. So you don't need to specify 2 sets of rules. You only need to specify 1. And then for the business justification, the level 1 manager comments, level 2 manager comments, what I'm using are stage visibility rules. And the stage visibility rules just simply, set these to be either hidden or read-only based on the stage that I'm in. Right? So let's take a look at the 5th, second to last, iteration of this. Go up here to 5. Okay, so you can see here's a little piece of text back, and there's order. Right? If I take a look at back, there's the JavaScript that says set the order test to false. Here's set the order test to true. All right, and then down in the hidden section, I have this checkbox, this Boolean field of order test. And this is the, true or false switch for the rule. So this determines what I'm showing and hiding. Right? And then for the other elements, the comments, if we go into stage visibility rules, I can see that the level 1 and level 2 manager comments, these are hidden in start. If I go over to level 1, This is read-only, so that you see the lock there that indicates that that's locked down. When the level 1 manager sees this, this appears in read-write mode, and level 2 is hidden, and so forth and so on. So in level 2, this is open, this is locked, that's locked. So those are the stage visibility rules. So if I preview this now, you can see the dynamic behavior. So you can see the little indicator there that says, this is over the amount, 2 levels are required. If I order this, the selection table is hidden, the order button is hidden, the back button shows up, business justification shows up, and the approver information shows up. If I go back, well, I can start over and pick a different phone. So it creates an experience which is walking you through a process, but in reality, it's just one page with some rules. Okay, let's move on. Now, this is kind of an interesting piece, and it's important in a workflow application. If you think about the Vault, by default, it will track who created a document, when they created it, and who last updated a document, when they last updated it. But if I have 2 approvers, when did level 1 touch it? When did level 2 touch it? What I really need is a workflow approval log. I want to know when it was submitted, the order was submitted, when level 1 approved it, when level 2 approved it, and who. Right? And you could have multiple levels. So here's an interesting technique for tracking this and managing this in the request document itself. So what I've done is added 3 fields, and these are timestamp fields. So order created, level 1 approved, level 2 approved, right? And then I've added next to the requester fields, which display, the requester and approver fields, which display some text. And I added a nice little image as part of the text. And in the text, I'm using echo text to pick up the requester name, and then this value order created, the level 1 name, and then when level 1 approved, so forth and so on, right? And then on the, this is on the valid button pressed event, which I'll show you in the form. This is the JavaScript that actually does the timestamp. And there's a test here. And the way that the valid button pressed works is the variable p action ID equals the ID of the action button. So when it's first submitted, the action button is s__ submit. So in this case, if the button is the submit button, the first submit button in the start stage, set the value of order created, which is that timestamp, the first timestamp, to new date. So this is just JavaScript for the current timestamp. Right? And then I do something here where I say, if it's this action or this other action, well, this is when, you remember there's 2 action buttons in level 1 based on whether it's 1 or 2 levels that are needed. So I'm doing a test on both. This is when level 1 approved it. And then finally, this is the level 2 approval button, and this is when level 2 approved it, right? And then I set some rules. And I say, only show these when the timestamp has a value, right? So let's take a look at this app now. And this is essentially the finished app that we're going to look at. And what I'm going to first do is I'm just going to run this. I'm going to go into view data because I want to look at the stage over here. as we go through this. Now, understand that the notifications, the role assignments are happening with the approvers, but I'm admin. So I'm able to test this and look at the workflow happening in front of me because I'm admin. But if I was not, I could not do this. So I'm going to launch a form. I'm going to make a request. So we'll pick a request that is over 900. We can see who needs to approve this, and you know, I want it. That's my justification. So I submit this, and then I come over here and I see that it's at level 1. All right, so the notification go out to level 1. So in that case, this is Andrew. Andrew sees that, okay, it was submitted by admin on this particular date. Admin's my name in my Domino directory. Not very creative, but anyway, you get the idea. So this is, Andrew would have it. Andrew sees that, okay, it's also got to go to Raj. So Andrew would make his comments in here, whatever they are, and would approve it. And then we come over here and we see, okay, now it's at level 2. And Raj would get this this notification. Raj would see, okay, I see that Marty ordered this, and Andrew, you know, I trust Andrew, and he would say, you know, great. And now that is submitted. Right, so there I have it, and you can look at it when it's approved, and you can see the history, the approval history that's in there. Everything is locked down. Right, and of course, this could go off and trigger something with your procurement system and make sure that the phone is delivered. All right, so we'll look inside this last app to see those final pieces on how it was set up. All right, so here I have the 3 different timestamps. Right, and then on the form events valid button pressed, this is where I have the code that's doing the timestamp. So, you know, based on the action button, set the field. All right, we went through this in the PowerPoint charts. All right, so when the field is set, it has a value. So then in these fields, I simply have a rule that says show it if it has a value. All right, and if it has a value, well, then I can therefore, you know, look at when it was approved. And I already know the level 1 approver, so I can fill that out with the information I need. So there you have the 6 steps. Well, we'll count the spreadsheet as step 0. For creating this application, if you follow this recipe, you can do the same. I'll go back to the title chart there. You've got all the steps, and you've got a picture of the app in each step as I walk through it. So hopefully that is helpful. That will provide some insight and some new skills and help you build cool Volt applications. With that, I appreciate you attending this tutorial. Thank you.